Thanks for having me. I've known about the group for years, and as I was explaining, I usually have conflicts on Tuesday and Wednesday nights with a couple of music groups that I play in. So I haven't attended, and it's just really nice to be here and to meet you all. And I did one of these before, but it was by Zoom because I think it was beginning of the pandemic. It's just nice to see a gathering. Part of the focus is going to be on how I've used the Festool Domino in some somewhat unorthodox ways. And I don't know how many of you have even laid eyes on one, but I'd be happy to show it to you. It's a big investment, and the reason it made sense for me is because I actually spend most of my time in the shop doing commissions. So I'm very cognizant of the number of hours that I'm spending making a piece, and as I'll show you, it can be a huge time saver. So this is a recent commission. It was just delivered a couple of weeks ago. It started with this. Somebody approached me and said they wanted me to make a shaker dresser, and I showed them this photograph. This is one that I made for my wife 10 years ago out of curly cherry, and they liked it. We did a design. They said they wanted a double dresser, described it to me. I did a SketchUp design, and I said, this is just too boxy and boring looking, and modified it and got approval for something that was only slightly different. So this is the design I went with. So if you think about how this is made, you could use solid wood dividers, and because of wood movement issues, it would wind up being very complicated and really heavy. I don't know how interested you are in this stuff. I mean, how many of you do commissions, but this is my cut list. So I'll do a cut list, and then based on the cut list, I can do an estimate, and I give the client a precise estimate. I say, I don't know if I'm going to be over or under. I hope none of you are put off by this. I actually benchmark my time at $20 an hour, which I know is ridiculous, but it's not like studio woodworkers are making, $100 an hour. So I don't want to undercut anybody. So the commission I'm going to show you, I think delivery and everything was $3,000. So I got the materials from Groff and Groff. I started using them at the beginning of the pandemic when I was having very little success finding retail outlets that were local. Have any of you ever bought material from them? Yeah, they're in Pennsylvania, absolute sweethearts. They will skip playing the boards. So I literally send them the cut list with a picture of what I'm making. I had almost no waste because they match grain, they match color. And, I do the final milling myself, but their prices are very reasonable. Their prices are all online, yeah. They'll do the skip planing and join an edge for 45 cents a board foot. So it glued up some panels, and I put that in here just because first use for the Domino was just to put some loose tenons in the edges the way one would use, biscuits or dowels, just for alignment. And very quick, the amount of time to do all of the loose tenon joinery for those panels, for those side panels, probably 10 minutes. And I don't know how you all found doweling, but it's not as precise as you think it's going to be when you're doing it. Biscuit joinery is better, I think, in terms of precision, but this is a major step up. These are all the materials for the interior parts. So I used sliding dovetails for the cross pieces, sliding into the sides. And then if you think about the wood movement front to back, you can't have cross grain construction and use something that's going to be rigid. So the cross pieces going from front to back, as you'll see in a minute, are glued in the front, but in the back there's loose tenon so that the back can move in and out as the sides expand and contract, and you won't get any splitting of the sides, any damage to the joinery. So those are the sliding dovetails, some half laps for the dividers. And then for the cross pieces, you can see all these loose tenons cut with the domino. Before I had the domino, I probably would have used dowels because, you know, cutting all those mortise and tenons, which would have been the traditional way. I mean, it's actually really hard to do mortises in end grain. You can do it with a router. It's not very safe. You know, this thing, it just, you know, in less than a half a day, I had all the joinery. So those are all the pieces that go from front to back. They get glued in the front, not glued in the back. The front top rail, a couple of half line dovetails, and then the cross piece would be glued in the front, screwed to the side of the piece with a slot for the screw in the back, so that as the sides expand and contract, there's some room for wood movement. Yeah.
Hand cut or machine cut dovetails?
Those are hand cut because, you know, setting a machine up to do that be a real pain, but I'll show you all. You know, I know that this is just a rationalization, but I'm convinced that if the Shakers had access to a they invented the table saw, right? If they had access to a domino and a lay dovetail jig, they would have used them. So, and, you know, I mean, I'm trying to be reasonable in terms of my commitment of time. You know, 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9 drawers to hand dovetail drawers. I probably could do maybe 2 a day, not more than that. You know, whereas with a lay dovetail jig that I bought 30 years ago, you know, I dovetail all the drawers in 2 hours. So they're sliding dovetails. So this is assembly. So one of the things about all this construction, I mean, this is showing a clamp. The only clamp I used was at the top where the half line dovetails are getting knocked in so that they wouldn't. Otherwise, the entire glue up, no clamps. Because the sliding dovetails there were tight. So they, you know, held the sides in. I had to stage this in my garage because I have only a tiny shop, and the thing is really heavy because it's all, you know, 3/4 cherry. So I staged it where it was. So there it is lying down on the front. You can see that's where the half laps will go, all of the domino mortises, glued in the front, screwed in the back, the drawer runners, that is. You know, there's the whole thing banged together. You know, dry fitting it. I don't know if you all do this. I mean, I go through the entire glue up process without any glue, take it apart, tweak it, and then glue it up because it is absolutely the scariest part of the project. I've actually had the experience of a project getting ruined at the glue up stage. Something binds, gets stuck, try to take it apart, and you turn what you made apart.
Is yellow glue or high?
I use yellow glue for most stuff. I think those of you who use high glue, do you pre-mix stuff? You're the only one? You mix your own, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I just have the feeling I really ought to be doing that. It doesn't small amount. So you have a glue pot that you in your shop, and yeah. It's just hot water. Yeah. No, I feel like especially for the more traditional stuff I'm making, I probably ought to switch over. Is it necessary that you just for the reasons for high for shares and other stuff would just be tight on, or do you
I don't know. I like it because the reason I like it is because if you screw it, it leaks out in the joint, just scrape it off. Which, squeeze that finish.
Well, the way I avoid that as a problem is I pre-finish all interior surfaces, and I actually put a little bit of wax where all the joints are, and then the squeeze out will just come off. But you're right. The other thing, so I started woodworking because my father-in-law was a professional furniture finisher and cabinet maker, and Tony used to do a lot of repairs, and he loved hide glue because you can take something apart just with a little bit of heat and moisture. Yeah, and this stuff. I mean, if anybody ever has to do a repair on this, they'll curse me because you can't make it. So there it is at the glue up stage. Done. Half blind dovetails, sliding dovetails all here, all the front to back stuff, loose tenons. That's just the top getting glued up and edging with my least favorite tool, which is a router. The base molding I made in 2 pieces, so I routed a modified bullnose. It's that's about 3/4, I think. So I, to put them together, it's a spline to attach the quilt to the bullnose. One of the things about Groff is they understand why you'd want a particular type of wood for what. So all the moldings are done using rift sewn stock. The drawer front, the fronts, the sides, that's all flat sewn, but I use rift sewn for anything where a straight grain would look better. There are the drawer runners that I was referring to. So that back screw is actually in a slot and glued in the front, not glued in the back. So no problem with it.
Do you lubricate the drawer runners with wax or silver?
So I think I even put it in a slide. So I finish almost everything I do with shellac, and after 3 or 4 coats of shellac, then I'll rub it out with everything, paste wax and some steel wool, or actually a microfiber cloth. The drawers, they slide very freely. I mean, it's as easy as if there was a drawer slide. So here, everything, there's a coat of finish on everything. That's basically done. It just needs the drawers. Mill everything at once. I don't know how many of you made chests of drawers, but you wind up with a lot of drawer parts. I mean, it's a lot of material. And I've become better at sharpening and using hand planes, but I've got a little jet 10-inch drum sander. I run all the drawer parts through a drum sander. Then they're all uniform thickness, which wouldn't be so critical if you were doing hand cut dovetails. But if you're putting your stock into a dovetail jig to do the dovetails, then they have to be really consistent thickness. And there's this first generation lathe jig. I bought it because I was doing the cabinets for our kitchen, and it felt like a big investment at the time. But now I've had it for, like I said, 30 years. And do they look like hand cut dovetails? Not really, but I mean, even though these are half blind dovetails in the front, which are hard to cut, I got all the joinery for the drawers done in almost no time. I have invested in some nice planes. So that's Nielsen low angle jack plane.
62.
Yeah, yeah, which is, you know, I love using that for leveling drawers.
I have a quick question about the interior. I didn't hear anyone mention anything about silicone finish or problem to help drawers run smoothly. Is that like bad, or is that something?
So furniture finishers hate silicone because if the silicone is ever there and you try to refinish, you'll get fish eyes.
No, just for like door sliding.
You know, my father-in-law taught me that silicone, anything like in Pledge or whatever, and wood don't belong in the same.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would avoid it only for that reason. If you ever contaminated the finish, you know, it's bad stuff. And you know, you can push these drawers in with one finger and no pressure, and that's just wax. Yeah, you can always rub some beeswax on it. Yeah. I pre-finish all the interior drawer parts. You know, dovetail drawers like this glue ups a breeze. I use plywood for the drawer bottoms. Again, you know, total rationalization. If Shakers had access to the plywood, they would have used plywood. I think
It's a false storefront, or is it?
no, so half line, and I cut those dovetails. I sized the thickness of the drawer front so that they would at least mimic some of the elegance of how you do a half line dovetail, in that that bit of wood on the front of the drawer in front of where the dovetails in is only about 1/8 of an inch.
Yeah.
But they're real half line dovetails. They're not a false front. I know some people will do drawers like this by doing through dovetails, which were a lot easier, and then actually using an 1/8 inch veneer almost on the front of the drawer.
But that's cheating, right? Like,
No, it's not cheating. Any of you follow, what's his name? He's a box maker. Kenny is his last name. Yeah. He does his drawers by doing dovetails and then veneer on the front. And you know, that's sort of his go-to method. And he would revile it if he heard it referred to as cheat. It's totally legitimate. It's just, you have to be able to, you know, cut homemade veneer. You know, you're not going to do it with store-bought, you know, 1/32 inch veneer, because the dovetails will telegraph through. But you know, if you can cut your own veneer, it's a totally legitimate way to do it. Yes. From them? Yeah, their poplar is great. No, their poplar is terrific. And you know, I didn't feel like I needed it for this, but if you ask them, they will sell you quarter sawn poplar for drawer sides. I mean, they're milling all their own stuff. So, and for any of you who are wondering about, you know, getting wood shipped from Pennsylvania, shipping costs are really low. I mean, the shipping costs for all the wood for 2 projects, because I bought wood for this project plus an armoire that I'm making at the same time. So it was a lot of wood. The shipping was $175. Groff and Groff, Groff. They've been in business quite a long time. Yeah. Yeah. And Angela, who's in there front, I'm I'm not a sponsor for them, but you know, Angela, who's the woman in their front office, is an absolute sweetheart. She gets to know you. I mean, you know, if you don't have a good source that's local and you want to buy a fair amount of wood and get it from someone who's going to pay attention to color and grain match. You know, the problem I always had, I mean, when I went to a lumber yard is I'd need to bring a plane with me because when it's in the rough, you can't tell what the color is. And if you pull 3 boards out of, you know, a big bin, you haven't, you know, they're not from the same tree. And as you'll see, the color match here turned out to be pretty decent. So I did put it in. So, you know, I sanded the 220. This being a cherry, you know, full disclosure, I could not use my smoothing plane on it without tearing it. I think, you know, that's a limitation of my skill, I think, in sharpening and skill with a smoothing plane. But I tried it on the underside of the top, and I was getting tear out. So I leveled it with a card scraper and then sanded to 220, which was very easy. I mean, not a lot of sanding. 4 coats of shellac. I actually just, you know, for a project like this, I'll just use seal coat, which is the wet shellac. Brush on the first 2 coats, let them both dry overnight. So they sand very easily. And then after the 4th coat, I sanded with some 600 grit tape on top of that with some steel wool and wax. And this is the finished product. I didn't, you know, I was doing 2 projects, so I was going to need 15 poles. And there's, I forget the name of the company, but there's one company on Etsy who sells cherry, maple, and walnut shaker knobs. So these are not screw-on knobs; they're traditional shaker knobs with a, you know, wooden tenon. And I throw them on my lathe on a chuck and sand them and finish them on the lathe. So they take a little bit of work, but and you can tell from the machine marks they're, you know, they're machine turned, but they're a couple of bucks each. Shaker's pretty good, right? Yeah. Yeah, so no, I, you know, if I'm doing a small project, I'll turn the knobs myself, but to try to, you know, turn more than a dozen knobs and have them look like one another, very time consuming. So, you know, color and grain match, pretty good. And that was them. I literally got the boards with the ends marked top, sides, drawer fronts. Mm-hmm. And you know, they don't charge for that. They just, the guys in the shop there are willing to do it. Let me worth pointing out, most of the by here is coming from Pennsylvania. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you know, if you go to their website, there's another outfit right near them. I'm forgetting the name. Irion? No, so Irion is a great place if you want a match set. In other words, you're basically buying, you know, an entire flitch from, you know, a huge amount of wood. It'll be absolutely superb stuff, very expensive, but they don't sell individual boards. Or if they do, they don't like doing it, and they will not do any milling. So, you know, they're sort of a step beyond me. I know that there's a local guy, he calls his company Industrious Woodworking. Really that's where he gets all his wood. But he's buying, you know, a lot of curly maple and bird's eye maple at once. Their prices per board foot are probably twice what I'm paying. The quality in terms of the figure is probably twice as good. I mean, it's really great stuff, but it's a huge commitment. And I asked them, because I had these 2 projects going, I called them up and I you know, asked them about shipping and everything. A 500-pound pallet of wood would have shown up in my driveway. And I said, well, you know, is the truck driver going to help me get it off the truck? He said, well, he'll throw it off the back of the truck for you. You know, so I mean, I'm, you know, one person operation. I was not going to subject myself to, you know, moving around 500 pounds. Whereas Groff, you know, that for these projects, both of them, no package was longer than 5 feet. And none of the packages weighed more than about 40 pounds or so. And, you know, they bundle them up, wrap them in cardboard. It's fine. You're paying a few bucks for it, but huge time saver. And they're doing a better job of selecting the wood than I could do at a lumberyard. So, how many of you have seen a Festool Domino in person? So a bunch of you, yeah. So I don't know if you want me to talk about this much or not. I'm going to show it. Well, you know, so we just say, so this is still under patent. So if you think that they're terrific and you wait a few years, you're probably going to be able to buy something comparable for a lot less money. I got this when I had a couple of commissions. I was going to be doing a lot of casework. And I actually donated my Freud biscuit joiner to this group. I don't know who wound up with it. Anybody here? You know, I used to use that for aligning boards for edge gluing and that sort of thing. And
Joiner a couple of years ago. Was it a couple of years ago?
No, it was recent. It was with Merle came by my place and picked it up. Also, I also donated my dowel jig. Yeah, because I wasn't using them and having them just sit around my shop. So you know, this costs a lot. I mean, I think I paid $1,100 for it, and it's that's not their whole big fancy set with, you know, 2 gazillion biscuits and everything. It's basically, you know, just it's the joiner with the attachments, and the attachments matter. So I don't know if you want to just come up while I'm just to look at it. You have to use it with dust collection. So it's basically a router bit. So I was just saying to somebody, this is absolutely the best machine and design tool I have ever used. It is really just perfect. So there's a router bit in there. You can see it extending. And as it spins, it goes back and forth. So that's how it cuts a loose mortise. That's how a mortise for a loose tenon. And the loose tenon is, you know, they're beech wood. They come in a variety of sizes. You know, they're quite precisely machined, and they're not particularly inexpensive, but you know, you slip those in with a little bit of glue, and they swell up the you know, the quality of the joints. It's terrific. A little, yeah. I mean, yeah. Yeah, it really is. I mean, so, you know, you register this where you want to put the loose tenon, you hold it down, grab this in the back, and you push. Angle adjustment with a bunch of détente, so it's very precise. That moves up and down so you can determine where it is relative to the surface. And this is a depth adjustment, so you can match that up to the length of tenon. And in fact, as long as you remember to do the adjustment, you can put a little bit of the tenon in one piece and a lot of the tenon in another piece. If, for example, you're doing a table apron to a leg and you want, the leg's not very hefty and you want just a little bit of the mortise in there. I recently made a mid-century modern table with a tripod. And I was trying to figure out how to bring these three pieces together. I think it's in here. So by the way, that's, I don't know if you want to pass this around, but that's the mortise type piece of MDF. The fit is extremely precise. What's the glue on this? Well, yeah, you do. I mean, well, you can glue them all into one side, and then you've basically got your piece with a tenon on it. This little adjustment is to make the mortise the width of the biscuit, or a little bit wider, or a lot wider. So if you're using it for alignment, you can give yourself some wiggle room. And in fact, if you use the registrations, say you're joining two pieces together like this. You can start at one end and you can do a tight mortise on both pieces, which will align the edge. But then as you move in, you can do a wider mortise for for all the other mortises, and that gives you enough wiggle room so the pieces will come together, and you don't have to worry about being that precise. That's part of what makes it so fast. Yeah, so I had to join together these three pieces. So I actually cut angles on the tenons and glue them together with some epoxy, and it's strong. I mean, once the epoxy is fully cured, it's very strong. So this adaptation of this is actually going to be in fine woodworking tips section. I just got the copyright. The copyright form came through last week. I think they'll publish it. I mean, I think if they bother asking for permission, it probably means they're going to publish it.
That's cool.
So any questions about this?
So when you're going like using that adjustment for roll, so you're just like marking out like every foot.
The way you would if you were doing biscuits, for
Yeah,
example.
just-
Yep. And then you
Just
just
going
push,
line.
next one, next. Yeah. And one of the attachments, this is an attachment that goes on either side. You can actually use this to register at specific intervals.
Yeah.
So you don't even need to mark out.
I see.
If you're doing casework and you're joining pieces of plywood together, you can just use these. I mean, it's basically a production machine. No, they're bits. They're bits.
There are a couple other companies, I think CMT.
Oh, are they making bits for them now?
Maybe there's someone else to buy some of. So
They're high quality. I mean, they say that you can cut about 10,000 mortises before you need to replace the bit. So, if you're really doing production stuff, then that's a limit. But, for somebody like me, the bit will last longer than I will. Do you want to show them the big one? So they come in two sizes. Oh, I just meant to say you have to use it with dust collection. If you don't have it hooked up to dust collection, then the dust, the bit will be fighting the dust and it'll be imprecise. But I did not buy a Festool vacuum. I bought a Rockler hose adapter. mat fits on there and I hook it up to my, my dust collector. And it's more than adequate. Works great. Who, Hearn, you're right. Hearn and Groff were in business together, right? Yeah. They got a divorce or something. Yeah. I suspect that Hearn probably is as good and just as friendly and everything. I don't know. I just have never used them.
They have all the
What's that, cordless?
Nope,
Oh,
but the cord is set.
Side by side.
So yeah, you can see there's quite a difference in the size of these two. So I was, my wife and I got a waterbed in 1985 and 30 years later it was falling apart. I had to make a new bed. I actually sent you some emails with some pictures.
Oh, yeah.
Just now.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know, we could, if anybody wants to see them, we could pull them up. But there were a lot of mortise and tenons involved in it. And so I just put out a search on Craigslist. And I didn't really have in mind buying one size versus the other. This popped up. It was, I think it was also around $1,100. It was around the same price, not fairly gently used. And so I ended up with this big one. So in some ways, the larger size is a bit more versatile because it takes big bits up to, I think, 16 millimeters. But with an adapter, you can use all of the cutting bits that the smaller size will use as well. So you can cut down to 4 millimeter dominoes, and this will do the same. But of course, there's a cost to it. It's much bigger, so it's much more unwieldy. And you really have to hold it in the right way for this one. You can't hold it by the handle because you're inevitably going to push it down and lose some of your registration. So you really have to hold it from underneath and push from underneath.
it's a big one.
It's a big machine, yeah. But
Are they?
They're corded.
Yeah.
Yep.
Jim, what's the difference in capacity?
So this one, it will cut deeper mortises. So it'll cut up to 40 millimeters deep. I think
this is 25.
20, yeah.
That's an inch, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I can do dominoes,
Big hefty ones for tables.
big ones. Yeah.
Yeah, I would not use that
So
for anything bigger than a tiny side table. Anything bigger than that, I actually bought a used hollow chisel mortise years ago, a benchtop one. And as long as you learn how to sharpen the bits, they're great. So, I wouldn't, if I had a big domino, I'd probably, sell that. I'd sell the hollow chisel mortise because I would have no use for it anymore. But
Maybe you just need to get friendly with Jim.
there you go. There you go. Well, so for a waterbed where there's a lot of weight involved,
right, you need,
with some big using some big dominoes on it. So the great advantage that I found to it, I used biscuits for years. The great advantage to the domino, I think, is that you can assemble things, dry assemble things, and they hold together.
right.
And then you can fine tune all of the fit, all of the joinery. You could not do that.
No,
with
biscuits.
Excuse me, biscuits.
And dowels, I think that if you're really careful and precise, dowels can work, but, you know, I just always found them really challenging.
They're a lot fussier.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the tolerances, if you're using dowels, are the order of 1/10 of an inch. And with these, you know, 100 of an inch.
So I'll just ask.
With it, I meant with a doweling jig, you know, but to be able to,
It's, yeah,
you know, drill the hole using a doweling bit, there has to be, you know, the tolerances can't be too great, or the bit won't fit the jig. So there would, you know, there's always a little bit of wiggling. And, you know, the glue area is, one of these biscuits has like 3 times the glue area of a dowel. Twice. The glue.
I don't think you can sharpen.
You gotta use a diamond wheel.
Yeah, these are carbide kits.
You can sharpen it, you gotta use a diamond wheel.
I haven't noticed.
well, you could sharpen.
I've had the Domino for a year now, and I've used it on probably 20 projects, and I have not noticed a change in performance. I mean, it feels like it's running as sharp as when I got it.
And when you have it on a vacuum, see no dust,
Zero
no shavings whatsoever.
But, you know, I guess, you know, all things being said, if you're not doing projects where you're going to be doing a lot of loose mortises, I couldn't honestly recommend it, because the initial cost is really high. But if you're going to do cabinets for a kitchen or something, or you can bang out the joinery to make plywood boxes very precisely in like no time. And, you know, if you go on YouTube and look at videos of people, you know, applying the Domino, there are a lot of people use them for making drawer boxes. They're just as strong as if, you know, for kitchen or workshop boxes. They're just, you know, as strong as you need them, and very fast. But, you know, final product, you don't see the biscuits is really just all about saving time in the making, and, you know, having things come out precisely. And for me, you know, a big part, I used to do loose tenon joinery, but I used a router, and I hated it. I mean, I just hated using a plunge router for doing those mortises. Tons of dust and really loud. These things, I don't know what you find, Brian, but they're not loud. They're not nearly as loud as a router. I mean, if I'm lazy, I actually use mine without any hearing protection. Don't really notice anything.
We can plug them in.
You want to hear it? You can also see the bit go back and forth. Right, yeah, right. Exactly. So thank you. My pleasure.